Declaro aberta a quinta sessão de trabalho
the fifth working session
do 11º
of
Fórum
the
Parlamentar
11th
do BRICS,
BRICS Parliamentary
com o
Forum,
tema
with the
Parlamentos do
topic
BRICS
BRICS Parliaments
unidos pela reforma da
together for the
arquitetura
reform of the architecture
multilateral
of the
de
multilateral
paz e
architecture
segurança.
for peace and security.
Gostaria de convidar para compor
I
a
would
mesa
like to invite to
Sua
the
Excelência,
panel
o senador da República
Excellency,
do Brasil pelo estado de
Senator
Pernambuco,
for the state of Pernambuco,
senador Humberto Costa,
Senator Humberto Costa,
coordenador
coordinator, parliamentary
do BRICS no Senado da
coordinator for BRICS in the Senate of our Republic.
Obrigado, meu irmão querido.
Thank you, my dear.
Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies and gentlemen,
parlamentares, deputados e senadores, deputadas
Parliamentarians,
e senadoras, é com grande alegria que damos início a esta quinta sessão de trabalho
and
do
senators,
11º
it is a pleasure for us
do
to
BRICS,
open session in the 11th BRICS Parliamentary Forum, where we're going to talk about
e da necessidade
architecture
urgente
for peace and
de
security and the urgent need
ao
to
assumir a
reform it.
presidência rotativa do BRICS para
When
2025,
we
ano
undertake
no
the
qual este fórum
2025
parlamentar
rotation
comemora seu
head
10º aniversário,
of BRICS,
o Brasil não
Brazil
poderia deixar de incluir
had to
entre
include
os seus 6 temas
among its
prioritários
6 priority
a
topics
necessidade
the need
de reformar
to
com
reform
urgência o estado
urgently
atual
the
do
current state of
multilateralismo no mundo.
multilateralism in the world.
E não por acaso,
And
entre
not
os
by
objetivos
chance,
deste
among
11º
the
Fórum
objectives of this
Parlamentar
11th BRICS Parliamentary
Brasil,
Forum in
está
Brazil,
a ampliação
we have the
dos
expansion of
em prol
debates
do multilateralismo
in favor
e da
of
reforma
multilateralism
da
and
governança
reform
global.
of global governance.
A recente expansão do BRICS,
The recent
que
expansion of
hoje engloba
BRICS,
11
which
países
now
membros
is composed
e 9
of
países
11
parceiros,
countries, in
é
addition to 9
evidência
partner countries,
incontestável
is
do interesse crescente
undoubtedly
entre as nações do Sul global
a
por uma
proof
ordem,
of
por uma nova
the
ordem
gathering of
multipolar
South global
mais
countries
justa
towards
e
a
equitativa.
fairer and more equitable global
Para
order.
que consistemos este novo estágio de governança
For
mundial,
us to achieve this
alguns
new
passos
world governance,
são
some
necessários e primordiais.
steps are necessary and
O
essential.
BRICS
BRICS
defende a reforma
defends
inadiável das
the
organizações das
reform
Nações Unidas
of the
e de seu
UN
Conselho de Segurança.
organizations and
A
its
estrutura
Security
de
Council.
governança da ONU,
The
que
UN
completa
security
80 anos em
structure,
2025,
which will be 80
não mais
years old
reflete a importância
this year,
a
no
influência
longer reflects
e
the
as
importance,
aspirações
influence, and
dos países da
aspirations
América Latina,
of the countries in
também
Latin
da
America,
Ásia
as well
e
as
da
in
África.
Asia and Africa.
Os desafios do mundo
The
contemporâneo
challenges of
demandam a reforma
our
inadiável
world
desta
demands
instituição,
urgent
não
reform of
obstante
this
sua importância
institution.
fundamental em momentos cruciais da
Even
história
if it had
recente,
been of extreme
foi concebida
importance in
nos
recent
termos de
history,
uma
it
geopolítica que já
was
faz parte do
conceived
passado.
in a moment that is part
A
of the
busca
past.
desse novo multilateralismo
The search for the
evidentemente
new
precisa obedecer os
multilateralism
princípios estabelecidos na
has
Carta
to
das Nações Unidas
observe
e deve se basear
the
nas
principles of
melhores
the UN
práticas do
Charter
direito internacional.
based on the best
O
practices
multilateralismo que
of
buscamos
international
é pacífico,
diplomacy.
é
And we
justo,
look for
seguro
a multilateralism that is peaceful, secure,
e, sobretudo, e principalmente
sustainable, and
inclusivo.
above all,
E
inclusive.
deve ecoar os
It
próprios sentimentos
should
que levaram à
resonate
criação
the very
do BRICS.
feelings that led
que
to the
mantém
creation of BRICS
este bloco
and that
coeso,
maintains this
a
bloc
não interferência,
cohesive, such
o
as
respeito,
non-interference,
a busca do
respect,
consenso
search
e a
for
amizade
consensus,
fraterna
and
entre nossos povos.
friendship amongst our
O
peoples.
BRICS defende,
BRICS
igualmente,
defends
uma
also
participação mais intensa dos
more
países do sul
intense
global
participation
na resolução
by
dos conflitos
by
internacionais,
countries in the
assim como defende uma cooperação mais estreita
in the global
no
south. I do
combate
beg your
ao
pardon.
terrorismo
In addition
em
to
todas as
closer
suas
cooperation
manifestações.
regarding fighting terrorism
O papel
in
dos
all its
parlamentares
types,
do
the
BRICS
role
nesse
of
contexto
BRICS parliamentarians
absolutamente fundamental.
is essential.
Os parlamentos são as instituições
Parliaments are
que melhor
institutions
ecoam
that
os anseios de
better
cada povo,
Echo
seja por meio de
the
legislações inovadoras,
aspirations of each
seja por meio
people
do
in the world,
intercâmbio de boas práticas
through
legislativas
exchange
entre
of
os países do
legislative good
bloco.
practices,
Os parlamentos
or
do BRICS
in
são
any other
atores
way.
imprescindíveis
BRICS
na
parliaments
busca de
are
uma nova arquitetura mundial
indispensable
de
in the
paz
search
e
of
segurança.
a new
Repito,
world
os
order.
países
I
do
repeat,
BRICS são
BRICS
atores imprescindíveis
countries
na
are
busca de uma
indispensable
nova
players
arquitetura
in the
global
search for a
de
new
paz
global
e
architecture
segurança.
for peace and
Nesta sessão de
security.
trabalho,
And in this working
as
session,
contribuições
the
de cada
contributions
dos
of each one of
participantes
the participants
certamente
will certainly
nos deixarão mais próximos
make us
deste
closer
objetivo.
to this goal.
Para organizar os trabalhos,
And I will
esclareço novamente que cada orador poderá
clarify
usar
now
a palavra nas
that
tribunas do
each
Senado
speaker has
por
5
até
minutes
5 minutos.
to speak.
Solicito também
Also,
que
I
todos
ask
possam falar de forma pausada
everyone to speak
para que a nossa tradução
slowly,
simultânea
as there
possa
is
refletir
simultaneous translation in several
verdadeiramente
languages,
os pronunciamentos com a máxima
and we
precisão.
can be as precise as
Por
possible.
fim, peço e esclareço
Finally,
que, a fim de
I
dar continuidade e
request that
fluidez aos trabalhos,
for
uma vez
the
esgotada a
works
lista
to
dos
be run
oradores,
smoothly,
é encerrada
after
esta
the
sessão
list
e
of
iniciaremos
speakers of the
a
session,
próxima sessão
we
de
will
trabalho
start the
sem
next one
intervalos.
without a break.
Agradeço imensamente a
Thank
compreensão
you
e
very
a
much
cooperação
for
de
your
todos com
cooperation
essas regras
and
que
for
são
observing these
necessárias
rules. They are
para o
necessary
bom andamento da
for
sessão.
the smooth running of our
E ao
session.
tempo, gostaria de agradecer e
I also would
cumprimentar a
like
oportunidade
to
que tive
thank
ontem
for the opportunity I
de
had yesterday
receber
to
no gabinete da
welcome
presidência
in
as
the
delegações dos
presidency
países
office
que estão
the
neste fórum
delegations
no Brasil
of the countries
uma conversa
that are
muito
here
fraterna,
in this forum
muito
with an
solidária
open
e
conversation
esclarecedora,
and
a
also
fim de
that made
compreender o
things
verdadeiro
clearer
papel
so
na
that we
relação
all can
interparlamentar
understand the
estabelecida pelos
best
nossos países
roles we can
e
play
pelos
in the
nossos parlamentos.
interparliamentarian
E também
relationship of our
Vossas
countries.
Excelências
Also, I'd like
pelo
to
jantar
salute
que foi
all of you
oferecido pelo Itamaraty,
and
pelo
thank you
nosso
for your
Ministério de Relações
attendance
Exteriores do
in
Brasil,
the
que também
dinner
foi
that was offered
jantar
by
muito
our
acolhedor
Ministry of Foreign
e
Affairs
fraterno
yesterday.
em confraternização
And it
ao
was
nosso
a
encontro
great
no Brasil.
opportunity
Muito
for us
obrigado pelo
to meet,
carinho de
and
Vossas
thank
Excelências com
you
este senador
for
e
being
presidente
there.
do Senado.
And thank you for
Gostaria de
your
convidar para
consideration.
fazer uso da palavra o senhor
So I'd like to invite Mr. Mohammed Bagher
Kalibaf,
Kalibaf,
presidente do
President
Parlamento
of
do Irã,
the Parliament of Iran.
Possa se dirigir à tribuna
Please,
para fazer a
you
sua
will have
manifestação.
the floor.
In the name of God, the Compassionate, the Merciful, Honorable President of the Federal Senate of Brazil, esteemed speakers of BRICS member states, and esteemed partners, distinguished parliamentarians, I would like to once again express my sincere gratitude for the gracious hosting and successful organization of this important summit. Gathering among the enlightened parliamentarians of BRICS presents a valuable opportunity to exchange perspectives, foster constructive cooperation, and reaffirm our shared commitment to reforming the international order and multilateral architecture, one that is capable of addressing the complex demands of the 21st century. Dear colleagues, the current international order, established after the Second World War and centered around a handful of powers, no longer meets the needs and realities of today's world. The existing structures have not only proven ineffective in addressing emerging challenges, but have in some cases become part of the crisis itself. The structural indifference toward the will of the majority of nations, disproportionate representation in institutions such as the Security Council, blatant discrimination in the exploitation of global resources, and political use of tools such as sanctions and financial dominance, selective multilateralism, and double standards all attest to the bitter reality that today's multilateral system suffers from a deep crisis of effectiveness and accountability. A glaring example of this failure is the catastrophic crisis in Gaza. For months, the oppressed people of Gaza have endured relentless bombardment, siege, and starvation. Thousands of children, women, and defenseless civilians have fallen victim to the systematic crimes and overt genocide perpetrated by the Zionist regime. Despite undeniable evidence, widespread international warnings, and the global outcry of peoples, the response of international institutions has largely been limited to silence, inaction, and at times even implicit support. Organizations entrusted with safeguarding peace, human dignity, and global justice have failed to take deterrent action against these blatant atrocities. This silence is not mere diplomatic passivity. In the eyes of nations, it is perceived as an implicit endorsement of these crimes. Today, people across the world are asking, if these institutions are powerless in the face of such tragedies, what purpose do they serve? We now witness that 2 years into the horrific humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, the United States has for the fifth time blocked the explicit demand of 14 Security Council members for a ceasefire, once again obstructing an end to the war and clear violation of international laws governing armed conflict. With unconditional support for the Zionist regime, the US has aligned itself with this child-killing regime, enabling it to commit one of the most unprecedented genocides of our time. Today, with direct US backing, Gaza is trapped in a comprehensive man-made siege, one that targets defenseless civilians through starvation, shortages of medicine, water and food, and silent death. History has rarely recorded such monstrous levels of cruelty and oppression against a civilian population. Another example, U.S. behavior in nuclear negotiations with Iran. The conduct of the United States in nuclear negotiations has not only been duplicitous and contradictory, but also devoid of sincerity and transparency. With a diplomatic smile, it speaks of dialogue, yet in practice it relies on power and influence to predetermine the course of negotiations, imposing its unjust decisions on the Iranian people. This is not dialogue, but it is a script for surrender. The U.S. seeks to deny Iran's natural and internationally recognized right to enrichment, explicitly affirmed under the NPT. Beyond that, through political pressure on international bodies, particularly the IAEA, it pushes for selective and unrealistic reports to manipulate public opinion and legal processes in his favor. This blatant violation of international law is yet another testament to the inefficacy of global structures in confronting U.S. unilateralism. Yet the Iranian nation stands firm, not for confrontation, but to defend its rights, dignity, and sovereignty. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, all these developments lead us to one clear conclusion. Reforming global architecture is not a political choice, but a strategic imperative for our collective survival and future. The complex and intertwined crises of today cannot be managed without outdated mindsets and tools. We need a new order, one that is founded on justice, equality, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. 2, reflects the will and voice of nations, not the interests of a select few powers. 3, upholds peace, not as a privilege, but as an inalienable right of all humanity. And 4th, recognizes development as a universal right, not an exclusive privilege of the global north. In this context, BRICS, as a coalition committed to fair multilateralism, holds unique potential to play a pioneering and inspirational role. With nearly half the world's population, a significant share of global GDP, natural resources, and cutting-edge technologies, BRICS can lead the way in shaping a new global order. BRICS must act with courage and innovation to reform the Security Council and amplify the genuine representation of the global South, develop independent, sustainable, and equitable financial mechanisms to counter dollar hegemony and unilateral financial networks, and strengthen cooperation in peace building, food security, climate action, and clean and green technologies, and enhance parliamentary collaboration to elevate the voices of nations into global decision-making. Accordingly, our concrete proposal is the formation of a BRICS parliamentary working group to explore pathways for establishing a truly inclusive multilateral system. This group could develop actionable strategies and a roadmap for structural reforms in global governance. Thank you for your attention.
I would like to invite Mr. Grigori Karassian, member of the High Chamber of Russia.
Your Excellency, Mr. Chair, on behalf of the Russian delegation, I'd like to thank our Brazilian friends for their warm hospitality. We are all witnessing a transition away from an obsolete unipolar world order to a multipolar framework with greater justice for all. There are new emerging centers of economic growth, of financial and political influence in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and in the Middle East. More and more leading regional powers are stepping forward to assert their sovereignty and independent foreign policies. Countries of what we call the Global South and East are claiming the place they deserve on the international stage and want others to take their interests into account. Unfortunately, not everyone is ready to accept these objective and irreversible shifts. In fact, the collective West has been using its would-be efforts to ensure the rule of law in international affairs to promote its rules-based order, which consists of interpreting what once seemed as universally recognized international norms as they deem fit, depending on the momentary vested interest. Let me know that many of, if not all, global challenges result from attempts by the West to preserve their dominance in international affairs and to develop at the expense of the rest of the world. This includes global food and energy security, limited access to funding, unequal representation in international institutions, and regional conflicts, of course. The West believes in its global dominance and wants to preserve it, but these efforts serve as a destabilizing factor. They have been sending a lot of weapons and munitions to Ukraine while turning a blind eye to the human suffering in the developing world. 1.1 billion people today suffer from extreme poverty, and over one half of these poor are under 18 years old. There are children. There are attempts to hijack the agenda within the key interstate frameworks and to subvert the UN Charter's key tenets. These efforts undermine universal multilateral institutions and compromise their ability to ensure a balance of interests. Russia has been consistent in its efforts to reinforce the UN's central role in international affairs in fully keeping with its charter and other norms of international law. At the same time, we must make sure that the UN Security Council meets present-day reality and requirements. We need to enable countries of the Global South in Asia, Africa, and Latin America to enjoy wider representation within this framework. They are the ones who must become a new pillar of this emerging global architecture. The collective West has failed to outcompete these new centers of economic growth and has turned up its sanctions pressure including through secondary sanctions. In particular, Russia currently faces almost 29,000 illegitimate restrictions and sanctions, but our economy has been able to adapt and has remained resilient. Russia is committed to equal dialogue and promoting cooperation. BRICS countries have learned to live with sanctions. Quite often these measures fail to live up to their purpose, but they have a negative impact on the global economy. These reckless steps undermine trust towards the existing financial mechanisms and instruments, including the US dollar. In today's world, parliaments play an increasingly important role in building fair, equal, and a representative world order. As legislators, we must promote honest and sincere dialogue among all stakeholders, and we welcome the mutually respectful conversations we have at interparliamentary platforms. On a special note, let me say that Russia came forward with the initiative to establish the BRICS Plus geopolitical group within the IPU in order to enable BRICS parliamentarians to find ways to overcome present-day challenges. We represent the people of our countries and need to coordinate our efforts and need a solid foundation for that. BRICS countries have been making a meaningful contribution to addressing challenges the world is facing today. We may be thousands of kilometers apart, but BRICS parliamentarians have been always in touch. We see a shared commitment to promoting open and trust-based dialogue in various sectors, and this forum is further evidence of the fact that we have unlimited potential when it comes to strengthening our cooperation. Colleagues, we all understand that dialogue and equal cooperation are instrumental for building a world of harmony with shared prosperity. This has been a defining tenet for BRICS for many years. We expect the 11th BRICS Parliamentary Forum to become yet another step in this direction. Thank you for your attention.
Now I invite Ms. Ana Maria Mari Machado, Vice President of the Cuban Parliament.
Buenas tardes, Presidente.
Good afternoon, President and other participants, distinguished heads of delegations and other participants in the forum, the Parliamentary Forum of the BRICS. Please receive the Cuban hug here and the team here present. From Cuba, we ratify in this forum the defense of multilateralism. At the same time, we reiterate our rejection of all wars, including non-conventional wars, attempts of reimpose an unipolar international order, and the plundering and theft of natural resources, or the imposition of unilateral coercive measures or pressures of all kinds, and of all those aggressions that threatens multilateralism, that undermines international peace and stability and disrespects the provisions of the charters of the United Nations. We consider that the parliamentary dialogue within the BRICS framework acquires special relevance, being spokesperson of the interests of our people, representatives of their political and national will, and being aware of the real demands, feelings, and needs of millions of people all around the world. In this sense, the parliamentarians of the BRICS and its parliaments, if we propose ourselves, we are in conditions to support the construction of a multilateral structure that meets the needs of the citizens representing different countries, larger or small in territorial dimensions and with different levels of development. The way to guarantee peaceful coexistence, preserve international peace and security is the defense of the multilateralism. In addition to the full respect of the Charter of the United Nations and the principles and norms of international law, it is necessary to promote dialogue, solidarity and international cooperation. It's urgent to establish a just, democratic and equitable international order to eliminate the root causes of hunger inequality. We have to prove laws that contribute to the progress regarding sustainable development. It goes beyond the gross domestic product to define the access of developing countries to financing on favorable terms and an adequate technical cooperation. In this sense, we'd like to highlight that the right to live in peace with security, with peace and security is threatened by the imperialism. The defenders of the sovereignty of the people, defenders of the rights of humanities, the application of the norms, the commercial norms, and using different modalities of payments and political pressure in an attempt to maintain its hegemony. United States has strengthened their measures, especially in the pandemic, during pandemic that we've survived. The same way the inclusions in the illegal lists of countries that support terrorism is a measure that has no basis, and it represents a terrible damage to our people. Facing these blockages, our countries has managed to move forward and has demonstrated the will and capacity to continue operating with other nations. Once again, we thank you for the solidarity received in the face of the blockage and other aggressions from the United States. In a world marked with so many challenges, the BRICS is an important group that to build a future world. The BRICS parliamentarians is reinforcing and supporting this group for a model that's more egalitarian. We celebrated that this mechanism of having the local currency imposing technological advantages. We want to promote solidarity and cooperation and implemented decisions for our countries to take our collaborations into a next level. We are happy to contribute to this mechanism.
Countries and our states promoting the development of cooperation, helping to increase participation of national exchange currencies, to consolidate our strength that must be the unity in diversity.
Lastly, we would like to advance in the reform of the multilateral architecture for peace and security for a more just and sustainable future. That's our duty. Let's do that. Let's commit to that, and this become not only a meeting, but we have agreements to complement what we have agreed between our countries. Thank you so much.
I now invite to the floor Mr. Sergei Hashkov, President of the Lower Chamber of Belarus.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, in the context of the lasted for decades the Cold War, the global military and ideological confrontation between East and West, a security architecture was created in the European space with the participation of extra-regional players with an extensive system of mutually complementary political and legally binding mechanisms in the sphere of arms control and confidence-building measures. It would seem that all mechanisms were created and functioned, putting into practice the principle of indivisibility of security, solemnly proclaimed in the Helsinki Final Act, and subsequently recorded in a number of fundamental OSCE documents. Why then did this mechanism fail? The answer is obvious. The existing architecture did not take into account the interests of all participants equally and fully, and therefore the existing military political instruments could not prevent the crisis of the European security system, which resulted in open armed confrontation in the region. Although the beginning of this was laid back in 1999 with the bombing of Yugoslavia in violation of the UN Security Council resolution and NATO expansion to the east. As a result, we have a profound crisis of international relations. Against this background, the global geopolitical landscape is being transformed. This is a painful process. After all, supporters of a unipolar world order are trying with all their might to retain the hegemony that is slipping out of their hands. At the same time, this process is inevitable. The breakdown of the existing world order marks the transition from a unipolar to multipolar and polycentricity. The European Atlantic security model, which has never been able to provide its worth, is being replaced by a Eurasian security architecture with a new generation of organizations. In Eurasia, there is a deep understanding of the principles of justice and equality, a full awareness of the importance of the principle of indivisibility of security, and a greater respect for international law, national, religious and cultural characteristics of each other. Eurasia is developing its own structures, such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Collective Security Treaty Organization, the Association of Southern Eastern Nations, the Conference of Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, which deal, among other affairs, with security and stability issues. For the BRICS countries, it would be worth to know that the Belarusian side, supported by the Russian Federation, launched the process of discussing the prospects for building a security architecture during a high-level international conference, Eurasia Security Reality and Prospects in Transforming World, which was held in October 2023 in Minsk. At the conference, the Belarusian side put forward an initiative to develop the Charter of Diversity and Multipolarity in the 21st century. The idea of the Charter is not taking out of thin air, but it is one of the practical elements of the initiative to recognize the diversity of paths of progressive development as a value of human civilization put forward by the President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, at the United Nations Summit in 2005. The initiative to develop the Charter is designed to contribute to the construction of the fair world order based on the principles of indivisible security, equality, mutual respect, and cooperation. The Charter could formulate the parameters and principles of the function of the security architecture, as well as the strategic vision of the multipolarity of the updated system of international relations. Speaking at the second Minsk International Conference on Eurasian Security held on October-November 2024, the head of the Belarusian state said that the Charter should accelerate the processes of political, economic, and other consolidation in order to ensure security, strategic stability, and the progressive development of our countries and peoples. The President of Belarus called for getting rid of prejudices and stereotypes and starting to painstakingly build a dialogue step by step, looking for points of contact and rapprochement. He advocates the creation of a common space of trust and cooperation for the unification of countries, not against anyone, but in the name of a common goal in order to avoid a fatal civilization rift. At the end, I would like to say that we understand that no paper, no document will solve the security problem. But we believe that work on the Charter can unite the vectors of efforts of interested countries and international organizations and form the basis of the process of building the modern security architecture and the formation of a multipolar world order. In Belarus, we believe that parliamentary diplomacy of BRICS, which is a symbiosis of official and people's diplomacy, should also make its contribution to the construction of equal and indivisible international and regional security architecture. Thank you.
Convido para fazer uso
I now invite to the floor
Birla, presidente da Câmara Baixa da Índia.
Honorable Presiding Officers, Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, this historic meeting of BRICS Parliament is a powerful and highly significant platform for the collective deliberations on essential reform in the global peace and security framework. It gives me great pride and satisfaction to share India's views on this subject. This topic is deeply aligned with the core principle of BRICS: justice, inclusivity, and representation. It is also reflects that increasing strength of parliamentary diplomacy in the disclosure of multilateral reforms. Excellency, no discussion on the global peace can be complete without addressing the shared threat of terrorism. The recent terrorist attack in the Jammu and Kashmir, India, in which 26 innocent civilians were brutally killed, has deeply shaken us. As Pakistan took no consent actions against the terrorist infrastructure operating from its territory in India exercised its right to respond, prevent future cross-border attack and upheld deterrence. Under Operation Sindoor, India actions were targeted and provocative, measured and responsible. The sole objective was to destroy terrorist infrastructure and neutralize the capability of terrorists. The Indian armed force targeted 9 states, including Bholapur, headquarters of Jail Muskedes, Murikti, headquarters of Lashkar-e-Taiba, and Muzaffarabad, site of the number of anti-India terrorist groups. These 3 places are listed in the United Nations Security Council 1267 monitoring committees with linkage of prescribed terrorists. On the Pakistan request, India agreed to ceasefire and cessation of military activity on 10th May. Under the leadership of the Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi, India approaches and new normal in dealing with cross-border terrorism has been clearly demonstrated through Operation Sindoor. Today, India stands firm on the zero-tolerance policy towards all forms of terrorism and responds decisively to every act on terror. Our zero-tolerance policy against terrorism is informed through robust laws and empowered institutions. India actively participates in global counter-terrorism effort, whether in halting terror financing, sharing intelligence, cooperating in investigations and judicial process, or preventing the misuse of modern technologies. India has long faced challenges of cross-border terrorism. It is imperative that all nations ensure that terrorists are not used in any form of terrorism. The misuse of social media, cyberspace, and the internet by terrorists, especially to spread radicalizations among youth, has become a global challenge. India has been the foremost of this fight. In October 2022, we hosted a special meeting of the UNESCO Counter-Terrorism Committee that adopted the Delhi Declaration. The same year, we had successfully hosted No Money for Terror Conference and Interpol General Assembly. Our goal is clear: unite the world in the fight against terrorism and transnational crimes. It is our collective responsibility to unequivocally condemn terrorism in all forms and take resolute action against it. India, the land of peace and compassion inspired by Lord Buddha and the terrorism of non-violence, also embodies a firm stance against injustice and aggression, a part of the solution ethos. Excellencies, India believes that we must build a global environment founded on friendship, mutual respect, and cooperation. To this end, India is ready to work in full coordination with the Parliament of BRICS nations. New challenges, greater complexities, and a multipolar arrangement indicates the urgent need to make the global peace and security architecture more inclusive and representative. India is fully committed to the principle of the United Nations Charter, sovereignty, equality, and peaceful. And thank you so much for all of you. Dhanyavad. Jai.
Since we finished the list of speakers, I'd like to highlight we're going to start to the 6th session of the work of the 11th Forum Parliamentary Forum for BRICS. I declare ended, closed the session.